If at 3:33 a.m. a bridge appeared where there had only ever been fog, and it promised a single crossing back to the moment that still grips your chest, would you dare to step on it? The bridge showed up on a Tuesday, stubbornly pretending to be Monday. Lucas was walking home from a night shift, body begging for bed and mind begging for mercy, when the city river lifted a warm mist. Between the banks, where there had always been only darkness, a thin structure rose as if someone had sketched light with string. On the handrail, a sign that seemed to breathe, Bridge of 333. One crossing, one sentence, one return. He laughed the way people laugh when they're scared. He was in his early 40s, knees tired, carrying a shelf and a half of almosts. He had almost called his father before the exam, almost apologized to his sister, almost said stay to the woman who took the suitcase and her courage to another city. The sharpest almost lived on a rainy Thursday. His mother's last call, ignored with a, "I'll call back later." He didn't. Then the bus, the hospital, the corridor that smelled like antiseptic, and the silence that never moved out. At the water's edge, alone, Lucas felt the bridge call his name without sound. His phone lit. 0333. The sign shifted as if hemming a coat. Rules 1. One person, one crossing per night. 2. You may carry one sentence in and bring one question out. 3. The crossing does not change facts, it changes how the facts hold you. 4. On return, you must return something that no longer serves, guilt, an old promise, and almost. 5. If you promise the living, keep it. If you promise the dead, live. Lucas set his fingers on the warm metal. He was afraid to enter and afraid not to. Then he remembered something his mother said while drying plates. "Son, some days you choose between courage and tomorrow's regret." He gripped the rail. He stepped up. The bridge was neither iron nor wood. It was tide wind. Each step felt like walking on breath. In the middle, the fog parted. On the other side, there was no future or past. There was the exact instant that hurt. He recognized green tile, a floral towel, the sound of rain on the clothesline, his mother's kitchen. The round clock read 7:08 p.m. The phone buzzed on the table, her name on the screen. His younger self, tired, hurried, flipped the phone face down. "I'll call back later," he told no one while pasta boiled in thin water. The rule allowed one sentence. Lucas swallowed the sob and moved as if entering his own memory carefully enough not to crack it. His mother hummed, stirring sauce with a wooden spoon. He wanted to unload a biography, ask forgiveness for decades, remodel the whole house at once. But the bridge's sign flickered at the edge of his vision, a firm friend. 1. He touched the table so the minute would feel his presence and said with the voice that no longer fit inside him, "Mom, I hear you." The spoon paused. Her humming warmed into a small laugh. She lifted her head the way people do when the wind changes. "Do you?" she asked, not knowing why she asked, not knowing the world had just made room by a millimeter. And by a miracle only the bridge of 333 understands, the buzzing phone stopped being accusation and became invitation. Lucas didn't pick it up, couldn't, facts were facts, but something in the minute shifted, like moving a piece of furniture so the room can breathe. Sepia drained. The kitchen took on now. She went back to stirring, still smiling, and whistled a tune Lucas used to call silly. Across the sink, the younger Lucas rubbed his eyes like a person who, for 1 second, remembered to answer. The question forming inside Lucas finished baking like bread in the oven. It arrived whole, the way right questions do. What in me needs to be heard before it gets fixed? The bridge tugged, sweet and inevitable. Green tile became fog. The wooden spoon became light, the rain became the river. Lucas returned to the bank with the question clinging to his shirt like the smell of garlic. The sign waited for the return. What to give back? His pockets were full of old things. He almost ran out of hands. First, he took out the sentence that haunted him. "I'll call back later." He folded it once, again, until it became a shy square. Then he pulled a particularly heavy almost. "I almost called Dad on exam day," and blew on it like a candle. Finally, with effort, he pried loose a chewed-up pride that had only ever blocked conversations. He set everything into the bridge's niche. The structure glowed blue and offered back something small, like a transparent card with 3 words stitched in light. Courage, presence, rest. Is that all? Lucas asked the nobody who clearly heard. The sign breathed again. Enough is whole at the size it is. Morning came, and the world continued not knowing about the bridge. The bus was late, the coffee scorched, the bank line behaved as always. But the question in Lucas's pocket was restless. At the first chance, he called his father. Nothing heroic, just a 10:12 a.m. call between a report and an email. The old man answered with the voice people use to hide longing in their pockets. They chatted about bad politics and the price of beef. At the end, Lucas said, "Dad, I hear you." On the other end, silence, then a throat clear, then the most emotional "okay" a person can say. That afternoon, he texted his sister, "Pick a day I can hear you with no fixes, no advice." She replied with a voice note that laughed and cried in the wrong order. Both sounds came in through the window like good wind. That night, 3:33 blinked like a headlight. Lucas returned to the river. The bridge waited, patient as a cue for hugging. The sign now read, "Choose what holds you, carry a sentence that releases." He crossed. The fog replayed another scene. The airport corridor, Anna's back leaving, a half-said promise like laundry abandoned on the line. He wanted to shout "stay," but the rule underlined itself in his mind. A sentence that releases, not grabs. Lucas swallowed the impulse and chose words that hurt from caring. "I can love you without making you smaller." Anna paused, took out an earbud, glanced back the way people do when they hear their name called in a market. There was no fix for the fact, no cinema miracle. But the blame he hung on her slid back to the shelf labeled the obvious. People are not projects. The returning question was prompt and honest. "What about other people? Our SE freedom scares me." He returned, in the niche, the foolish idea that love failing to control is failure. The bridge gave him an invisible thread. For a hem of respect, the sign seemed to say. He kept it. The city began to feel something it couldn't name. Strangers started noticing each other in elevators. The baker, not knowing why, scribbled on the bread bag, "Drink water, breathe slow, answer later." School kids invented a game called Sentences That Fit. You won if your sentence took up less space and told more truth. Old folks sat on the wrong benches on purpose just to ask, "Which story is holding you?" and actually listen. At work, Lucas entered a meeting determined to listen first. A colleague, trained to interrupt and be interrupted, froze when he said, "Tell me how you thought this through. I want to understand before I weigh in." 30 minutes later, 3 fewer decisions and 1 more hug. The boss didn't clap. The day fit better anyway. On the 3rd night, the bridge took Lucas to himself, age 15, gripping a letter he never had the courage to deliver to a friend. It said a small, whole truth. "I like you in a way I don't know how to say." He couldn't change the fact that the letter stayed in a drawer, and the friend became an outline of what if. But he could whisper to the boy a sentence that fits. "You don't have to be an acceptable version of yourself to deserve to stay." The kid didn't hear, and yet something did. The question stuck to Lucas's shoulder on the way back and asked for bread. How many drawers am I still using as excuses? He returned the metaphorical drawer, fear wrapped in brown paper, and received a simple note in exchange. Write down and execute one ridiculously small gesture. The next day, he texted a friend he'd drifted from out of pride. "Saw something dumb today and missed you. Coffee on me?" The reply, a laughter sticker and a time. Ridiculously small, ridiculously decisive. Weeks passed and the bridge of 333 became a secret habit. New rules appeared now and then, embroidered in air. Bring a memory with no caption and take back a cent. Trade your repeated question for one that makes you breathe. If you promise yourself, keep it like you would for someone you love. One night the bridge showed a hospital room. Lucas's father, Not the man of rough jokes, but the one midway between stubborn and scared. Lucas wanted to say, "I'll handle everything, don't worry." But the bridge knows the measure between comfort and lie. So he chose this instead. "I'm going to learn how to ask for help." The old man, without knowing why, let go of an air he hadn't noticed he was holding. Back on the bank, the question grabbed Lucas by the collar. Where am I faking courage to hide exhaustion? The next day, he called the neighbor, Dona Estela, and asked her to remind him to eat. "I'll knock at 1 p.m. with a plate," she said. "No arguments." He accepted, and cried quietly over someone's beans and rice that asked nothing heroic of him. There was also the night the bridge showed no one. It showed silence. Lucas stood still, hands empty, until he understood that this crossing was to learn to rest without guilt. The sentence he carried in was almost nothing. "I'm allowed to stop." The question he brought back resized the world. How often do I run because I'm afraid I might fit? He returned a broken inner clock, the kind that only ticks urgent, and received a bookmark that read pause. Viral without internet. That's what the bridge did to the city. A teacher wrote on the board, one sentence, one question, one return. Students, first mocking, then curious, practiced with small homework. Sentence, I will try. Question, what do I need to succeed? Return, the shame of starting badly. The barber put a jar on the counter labeled, "Leave, you're almost here." People left scribbled scraps, a hair tie, a single earring, a bus ticket from a holiday. Not spells, gestures. Lucas realized the crossings were less about the bridge and more about the way he crossed his days. He started collecting small permanences. Answer slowly, look people in the eye, water the plant before it screams, say a complete no, put the phone away while someone says, "Let me tell you something." Because the universe has humor, Anna came back to visit her parents. She texted, "If you want, we can grab coffee." Lucas looked at the bridge, at himself, at the imaginary sign now stitched into his forehead. Don T turned meetings into exams. He arrived on time, ordered 2 coffees, asked about her work, and listened to the whole answer. When their silence turned comfortable instead of desperate, he said, "If you ever want a place to rest without explaining, I can be that place. If not, I wish you many roofs where you fit." They didn't hold each other, they belonged for half an hour. They left with the dignity of people who accept that other people as choices aren't personal insults. On a hot wind night, the bridge brought a possible future. Lucas old sweeping a small porch, a dog asleep in the sun. No glory, no medals, ease. Old Lucas paused his broom as if recognizing company and handed over a key without ceremony. The regret that remains is usually when we didn't to stay. The sentence of now became a glitterless vow. I will choose to stay in what is worthy. The returning question pulled up a chair. What truly is worthy of my staying? He dropped 2 habits in the niche, justifying and over-explaining. The bridge gave him good quiet, the kind that ties the world from the inside. The end, or beginning, came on a night with no bridge. At 3:33 there was no light over the river, no sign, no new rule embroidered in air. Lucas felt a pinch, then laughed, then understood. He walked the neighborhood. At every corner he found tiny bridges. The pharmacy clerk who said, "Good night," like offering tea, the neighbor who saved his mail, the cat that claimed his shins as territory. At home he wrote on the window glass, "Inner bridge, open, hours, all. Crossing, 1 sentence, 1 question, 1 return." He lifted his phone and recorded a voice memo, a new habit, ridiculously useful. Sentence, I hear you. Question, what in you needs to be heard before it gets fixed? Return, I'll call back later. Today, I call now. Next day, he took bread to Dona Estela and learned the recipe for the cake that cures afternoons. He ate lunch with his dad without an agenda. He helped his sister hunt for an apartment that was more shelter than display. He bought fresh soil for Anna's plant even if she might never bring it. He sat on the park bench and wrote letters he sent. He apologized without a speech. He forgave without a parade, and when someone said, "You've changed," he answered, "No, I just started staying." One morning, an unmarked envelope slid under his door. Inside was a light piece of metal etched with 3 words: courage, presence, rest. Lucas smiled. Somewhere far, and now inside, the invisible sign blinked. And if you're wondering whether the bridge of 333 is real, here's an honest return. There are bridges of iron, stone, and wind. Some bloom in the middle of rivers, others in the middle of ribs. The rules are nearly always the same. One sentence that fits, one question that opens, one return that lightens. The rest is the crossing you choose to make. Now, not later. Because sometimes the miracle isn't traveling through time. It's finally traveling through yourself.